who do you, as being Danish, who do you relate to the most? Do you relate to the Swedes, the Norwegians, the Icelandic people? Which one is it?
Yeah, Sweden and Norway, like they're right next to us.
Right, and Iceland's over in its own.
Its own little bit, and it's also like language a little bit different, culture wise probably similar, but still a little bit different. Norway, Sweden, Denmark could all be the same country more or less, to be honest.
Yeah.
Denmark, of course, being on the top a little bit better than the rest of those two,
And then what about
but
what about Finland? Is that
it's
more of
all
an Eastern?
yeah, it's a little bit more exactly. It's actually, I should be careful what I say here, but I would also like to say that like I also like to think that they are a little bit more Eastern in a way. And what does that mean? I don't know. Like it just means they're probably a little bit more. Like they're not as super outgoing. The language is
Mhm.
also different from like
Sure,
Norway, Sweden,
sure.
Denmark. We can get around, like understand each other, but Finland is like, and same in Iceland. They're kind of like away from that a little bit. They have their own like variations of that. That makes it a little bit harder to understand, I guess. So yeah, Finland's a little bit of its own thing too.
I had Snorri Barron on the show,
Oh yeah.
and we talked all about Iceland and why they're such good CrossFitters and blah blah blah.
Yep.
And it's just it is part of their culture. And Annie, doing so well early on highlighted it, and because on the main stage, like you're looking at a girl who went from Iceland and became so big in a
Hmm.
worldwide sport that it became popular then, and it kind
Hmm.
of grew. It's like, why are the Kenyans so good at running? Because they've been successful at it, and when they see success, then they all gravitate towards it.
That makes sense. Yeah.
How did Lauren end up on an Icelandic team?
We ask ourselves, we ask that question too. It's very, I don't know. I hope it's a known story that I can share, but there's really not anything special about it. It's very random. I think Andy had asked Lauren back in November or something like that about if Lauren wanted to do a team for Wodapalooza. And Wodapalooza was a competition coming up in
Hmm.
January, so it was relatively close to it. And Lauren had elbow surgery back in July, and while she probably would have been ready by January, you kind of just you think twice before you say yes to go on a team with Annie. But like you want to make sure you do your very best, and you don't want to hold her back. And with Lauren having elbow surgery, she was like, Annie, like I would love to, but it doesn't make sense for me. Like I would take a big risk, and also like I wouldn't want to let you down. So it kind of fell through, but that was the first conversation they had about like maybe doing a team together. And why, I don't know. Like honestly, like Annie she's always been really nice to her, and I hope you've been nice to her as well. But we've always just talked well together. Like Annie's boyfriend Frederick is from Denmark, so I guess in that sense we had a little bit in comparison there. And then yeah, like a couple weeks later, she was like, "Hey, what do you think about doing a team for the CrossFit Games?" And Lauren was like, "Absolutely."
And how much time has she had to spend there?
So the rule says you have to be there. I forget the exact wording of the rules, but you had to be there in January, and they got allowed by CrossFit to move there a little bit later in January. So I think after Wodapalooza, Lauren went to Iceland, so it was about the middle of January, and they were allowed to do that for CrossFit, and then essentially all the way until the season ends, you had to stay there.
I'm surprised they have any rules now. You know,
um,
with the way things have been. I'm sorry. I've been critical of it, but it is so confusing.
yes,
The Nobody
don't disagree.
knows who's getting it. The last chance qualifier. They're going to be people like competing the day before. Who's in? What teams made it?
Full agree. Full agree.
I don't know what they tried to do this year,
Yeah. Hmm.
but it's impossible to follow, and it makes it not as fun to watch,
I agree with
not
that.
as much to pay attention to. I don't know who has. I mean, I kind of have a general idea of who's qualified, but you just keep seeing, oh, then so and so, and you're like, oh, he's in that or he's not in. Is he
Yeah.
done? Is he?
Hey, I fully agree. There's so many. I mean, it's kind of sad, right? Because like we've been with this sport since very early days, and like we've been through the rise of it, and it's been a really good journey. It's really exciting, but a part of this, of course, also that people are always going to be scared of changes, and I get that, and that's going to be the argument against what I'm about to say here is that it's just because you don't like changes, but in
Mm,
reality, is that like we had regionals, then they started introducing super regionals, whatever they were called, and that was also kind of fun. But then after that, like then it's just, in my opinion, it started going south like a little bit. It's just then they started introducing these what's it called, like these like qualifiers around the world. I forget the name of them now, which is embarrassing, but that was kind of fun because it allowed the athletes to travel a bit more. It allowed for like super teams to be to be made, and it allowed a little bit more for a sport probably to be created. But during that whole time, and especially in the past couple of seasons, and I know COVID is not making it any easier, but kind of what you just said, it's just there has been no clear direction in my opinion. It's been very just unorganized, and like I miss the old, and again of course like changes here, like we just have to get used to it, part of it, but I do miss the old days a little bit more where things were very clear. It was a very like you went to the open, very top of the top, went to regionals, and then from regionals you go to the games, and it was very much like, hey, like you
Yeah.
knew who was
What?
going there.
Why?
It was
What
more
was
clear.
wrong? What was wrong with that?
Agree. Yeah, I agree with that. I miss
I
that
mean,
too.
the super regionals. I didn't even know why that was needed. I'm like, well, wasn't regionals the same thing? Why? Like, why?
Just
Why are
more
there more?
complicated.
I
Yeah.
think. I mean, the only thing that I can think is that all of these people that were creating their own events, like the Wadapaloozas and all these
Yep.
things, it was detracting from CrossFit or a distraction, or it was pulling money away. Whatever it was doing, they were like, we need to find a way to be inclusive with them. That
Hmm.
those, and it's funny. I was talking to Josh from RPM today,
Hmm.
and
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and he just stopped over here. I got some equipment from them doing their programming, and
Yes.
he was saying like, why not? Like, what's great is you look at like we follow. I guess he does too. I follow surfing, and if you look at golf, golf has all these events that are big events that like you want to win this event. You want to win the Masters, and you want to win
Hmm.
the PGA, and you want to win just like surfing. You want to win Bell's Beach. You want to win Pipeline. You want to win Chopu, and they're their own big thing. Pipeline's its own big deal,
Hmm.
but you get points from it, and you get the points and you move towards the final event of the year, which is usually Pipeline.
Hmm.
But so you go to 11 different events during the year, and it culminates at Pipeline, and so the scores build, and usually by the end it's down to a couple guys, and it's like, well, what can happen, and blah blah blah. But you've watched all year, you've followed, you've gotten to know these athletes. I mean, why not? What he said, which I agree with, is why not use that template? It works with so many other sports.
So many sports, right? Yeah. Hmm.
They go to the rogue event. They get so many points from there, and you go on to Waterpalooza, you
Yes.
get so many points from that. You go
Yes.
to the Dubai, and
Yep.
blah blah blah. So
I think that would be great. But again, it kind of goes back to again like CrossFit is just not again, we got to be careful, but sport, it's not a sport yet. It's just still a
you
fitness
know what's
program.
funny? You keep saying I got to be careful.
Oh, sorry. Okay, do you know what? We can edit things, I guess.
No,
So if
no,
I
no,
go,
no,
so,
no, 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 no. What I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna interrupt. We used to say that all the time. Like we were really worried on the show
yeah,
back in the day because there was a little bit of a Big Brother is watching kind of thing, and
that's what it
they
feels
would,
like sometimes. Yeah.
but it doesn't. It doesn't
Yeah.
exist anymore. It's
eh,
so it's so fractured that
Really?
everybody. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Do you know
mean,
what? I can see that actually. I can see that. You're probably right about that.
there's no real
And I also don't
opinion
care.
hanging from above. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also shouldn't care anymore because I don't compete anymore. But
Yeah.
do you know what though? I will say when you are in it, and I guess when I reason I'm saying that is because I was in it for a long time, and there used to be at least there used to be a lot of like, hey, you got to know the right people. It's just like, it's just there was a lot at least early days where like, hey, it's if you know the right people, it's good to know you want to be on the good side of everything, really, whether it was from CrossFit Media to Dave Castro, whatever it was. Like you wanted to be on the good side of things, and it really came down to like, hey, if you're on the good side of things, you would get exposure, you would get
Sure. Sure.
taken
Sure.
care of, and
And
that's why like you had to be careful at some point because I know like some people are just they were getting kicked out like, or they were moved over to the bad side, so to speak.
But you know what? I used to be critical of CrossFit for that. But
Yep,
now looking back and comparing it to other sports, it's like that in every sport. Look at Colin
everywhere.
Kaepernick. Look
So
at
true.
Colin Kaepernick.
So true.
You speak
Yes,
out, you're not playing anymore.
so
Like you rock the boat, you're done. It
it's
happens.
true. It's
They,
true.
they like they investigate NFL players. They want to know what your background is like, what you're capable of. Are you going to get along with your teammates?
So
Blah
true.
blah blah. And then, are you going to talk well? Are you going to speak well of your coaches? Blah blah blah. Because it's a business.
I mean, but
You,
even higher level too, right? Like, government too. Like that's a different rabbit hole we're going into there as well.
Sure,
But there's
sure.
just so many different places, right? I mean, it really is. And you're right. I think it's just for us, it was just CrossFit was a smaller sport, so maybe it was more obvious, and it was also more obvious for us because we were, so to speak, on the inside. So it came very close to heart. So and it was something it was very mindful. We were very mindful, and to a certain degree still are very mindful about like just making sure that like, hey, just want to make sure we don't piss the wrong people off, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah, and it was, in something like CrossFit where there's one owner and one director of the
Yeah.
games, there were two guys you really don't want to piss off,
Yes,
and
that's so
there's
true.
no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But uh, how many people have really been run out of the? Not really. They didn't really
Hmm.
run anyone. The only people that got run out of the business were those two.
Backfired, I
Yeah.
guess you can say.
Ironically,
Ironically, yeah,
those are the two that got run out,
that's
and
kind of true. Yeah,
and
you're right. You're right.
and was it a good thing? God only knows. I mean,
Yeah.
look where we are now. So
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it was or not. But anyway,
no.
no. So anyway, back to what you were saying with the season kind of restructuring. That I think you're right. And what I was then saying is that I think we're just not quite there yet with CrossFit as a sport. I think we're still is in this phase where, and this is just my opinion, but I think we're in the phase where CrossFit is still considered like a fitness training, a way of training really. And they've tried to establish some sort of a competition around it as well, where like, hey, like you can compete and it is a sport at the highest level, which is true. I just think it's just not done. Like the separation between the two is not clear enough yet, in my opinion. There needs to be a
Hmm.
better separation
Hmm.
where like the CrossFit Games is its own thing. Like
Hmm.
people over here, which is 99.9% of the people, they should not be doing anything that remind like this is close to this over here.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I've said the exact same thing, and it's like they almost need to rename
yeah,
the games to
agree with that.
like the fitness games or something
Hmm.
like that, so that CrossFit can do its methodology and what it does. And the truth is,
I very
if
much
you
agree.
were going to train for the games, let's say calling it the fitness games or the whatever it's called,
Hmm.
a lot of people wouldn't go to a CrossFit gym to do it because,
Hmm.
or do CrossFit per se to do
Hmm.
it, because you do more of Olympic weightlifting and
Yes.
sports specialization
Hmm.
and stuff like that that's going to prepare you for it. So
Yes.
doing the workout of the day at a CrossFit gym is not, we've all known that does not prepare you for the games.
Just
You know,
not.
no. So they're not in the same world. I mean, they're in
No.
the same world, but like, I don't know, there needs to be a delineation or something
Yeah,
between the two.
and I don't have the answer for it, right? Either. Like I'm not pretending here that I know the solution to it. It certainly is a hard job to come in as a CEO of CrossFit and try to like to try to figure this whole beast out because I mean, you have potential though. I think you're dealing with something that has massive potential. I think that the CrossFit as a training methodology like is really good. I really believe that. I think the idea of high intensity functional fitness, which is also what we do in our program, I think that is a really good training form for most people. I'm not to say like there's other ways you can train, but I think CrossFit is very efficient and effective way to train. And then you got CrossFit Games, which is also shown to be wildly popular. Like, I mean, if you were on ESPN and Netflix, I mean, obviously something is working there, right? So
Hmm.
you got a potential. You just got to figure out, like, and I just don't think they've quite figured out yet how to like structure that right, in my opinion.